Hello. No one here seems to know my name, so I won't tell them either. But this seems to be an interrogation for a documentary, you said? So the camera is necessary. Note. You know, I have here in my hand Jonathan Harker diary. It was not really hard to get it, but I won't give it easy anyway. So let me tell you a story, since I seem to know everything that happened. Okay, this is Jonathan's Harker diary. We already know Harker. This story begins about 7 years ago, people. His name was Jonathan Harker, again, as you already know. This young man lived in London, and selling houses was his job. But one day he made the mistake of accepting a job from a rich man in Transylvania. You already know, Count Dracula. Even though planning to marry later in the year with another important person from this story, Mina, he left for Transylvania to get the job done. Really bad choice. Silly, he didn't know what would happen to him. Yeah, that's true. And so, on 4th May, he arrived at a little town called Bistritz. He had 6 hours to wait before the coach came to take him to the Castle Dracula. So, he went into a little hotel. Oh, I was there at the time. I actually remember what had proceeded to happen.
Where are you going again?
Castle Dracula.
Don't go there.
But I have to, it's for business.
Take this. There's a danger at Castle Dracula. Maybe this will help you.
Isn't this supposed to be the vampire at the top of the mountain?
Come in, Mr. Harker. I'm Count Dracula.
Harker, what's going on? Their business was now finished. The Count had all the papers for his new house, and there was nothing to keep Harker in Transylvania or in Castle Dracula. But the Count did not want him to leave. He thought about Mina and her friend Lucy. Lucy and her mother were staying by the sea, and Mina was planning to visit them sometime. Stupidly, he told the Count about them. Yeah, really stupidly, actually. One morning, Harker was standing in front of a mirror, shaving. Suddenly, a hand touched him, and a voice said, "No, good morning." Harker could not see him in the mirror. Can you see me in the camera? How are you making this? His hand shook, blood began to run down his face, and Harker saw that Count Dracula was watching it hungrily. But his hand touched the gold cross around Harker's neck, and his face changed. He did not speak, but left the room quickly. Harker was high above the ground. Many of the doors of the castle were locked. He was a prisoner. Just now you know that?
You must write to your office at London and tell Mr. Hawking that you'll be here for another month.
Suddenly, Harker knew that Count planned to kill him on that day. Just now you noticed? What could he do? There was nothing. He could only wait and try to escape. A week or two later, noises could be heard in the castle, the sound of men working. Perhaps one of them will take a letter out of the castle for me. No, they won't, Harker. But it was too late. It was already June 29. He saw the Count leave the castle, with his letter to Mina in his hand. The night the come to him again. Tomorrow you will return to England. Harker then lay down on his bed. During the night he heard a woman's voice outside his room.
Harker, come out. Shit.
Wait, your time has not yet come. Tomorrow night you can have him.
Morning came and Harker was still alive. Once again, he went down the wall and into Count's room. He ran out the stairs to the room with the coffins. The Count was there in his coffin, but he looked younger and his hair was no longer white. What's happening? There was blood on his mouth, which ran down across his neck. Harker had to touch him to look for the keys. He felt all over his body, but they weren't there. Suddenly, he wanted to kill Count Dracula. He took a workman's hammer and began to bring it down hard on that horrible smiling face. But just then the head turned, and the Count's burning eyes looked at him. The young man dropped the hammer and stood there, shaking. He ran upstairs. If he die, it will be better than the death that waits for him at the castle road again.
Goodbye, Mina. Will I ever see you again?
This is Mina's story. While Jonathan was away, she was very unhappy. He did not write to her often, and when he did, his letters were strange and very short. She knew that something was wrong, but what? Was Jonathan in danger? She felt better when a letter from his arrived. Jonathan said that he was coming home and was at Bistris. Her friend, my chef, Lucy, also wrote to her. Mother and I are staying at Whitby, by the sea. Please come and stay with us, so I can tell you about my marriage. Mina went there. Lucy met her at the station. She was full of life and talked happily of her plans.
Oh, Mina, I'm really happy and I love Arthur very much.
But sometimes it was hard for Mina, because when Lucy talked of Arthur, I thought of Jonathan again. At night, Lucy and Mina slept in one room, but sometimes she walked in her sleep. She began to sleep badly. The next morning, there was a ship on the beach. It is a Russian ship from Varna on the Black Sea. Lucy's servant, sorry, I told them. That night, Mina woke up and found that the bedroom door was open and Lucy was not there. But she knew that Lucy sometimes liked to go and sit quietly in the churchyard. She was sitting in the churchyard. Mina saw something dark behind her. Slowly, its head moved nearer to Lucy, and then nothing. Mina woke Lucy, and she put her hands to Lucy's neck and saw that there were 2 large drops of blood there. A day or 2 later, a letter. Jonathan was ill and in hospital in Budapest. Of course, Mina went there. Jonathan was very ill, but he was getting better every day. He gave her his diary to read, and so she learned about Count Dracula and Jonathan's terrible adventure in their castle. But it seems that a workman found him and took him to the hospital. They arrived back in England on September 1880. Everyone looked happy on that warm autumn evening, when suddenly Jonathan's face went white and he cried out. He was looking at a carriage outside the shop.
It's the Dracula, here in London.
Then I heard from Arthur the terrible news of Lucy's strange illness. She lay in the bed all the day and did not move. She was as white as a ghost. When night came, she was afraid to sleep, and in the morning, on her neck, there are 2 strange little wounds. She was losing blood, but how? I decided to send it for my old teacher Professor Van Helsing from Holland. He came immediately.
We must give her blood at once.
She can have my blood, all of it to the last drop.
You must watch Lucy every night.
I was working at my hospital during the day, and after a week I was very tired. So one night I did not go to Lucy's home. I needed to sleep, and I knew that Lucy's mother and the servants were there. The next morning at the hospital, I had a note from Van Helsing. "Watch Lucy carefully tonight," he wrote. "I shall be with you tomorrow." But that was not today. The note was too late. I hurried up to the house immediately. Just then Van Helsing arrived. We went round to the back of the house, and Van Helsing broke the kitchen window, and we went in. It was dark in the kitchen, but we could see the bodies of the servants in the floor. They were not dead, but asleep. We ran up to the Lucy's room and stopped outside it. How can I describe what we saw? The bodies of Lucy and her mother lay on the bed. Van Helsing looked down at the two women. "The poor mother is dead," he said. "But for Lucy it's not too late." After a time, Lucy began to show some life. From time to time she slept. But she did not fight to stay alive. Arthur, when he came, he was very unhappy. One of us sat with Lucy all the time. And that night Arthur and Van Helsing slept on the sitting room, while I watched over Lucy. Van Helsing went over to Lucy and looked at her. "The wounds on her neck have gone," he said. "She will soon be dead. Bring Arthur." When Arthur and I came back, Lucy opened her lovely eyes. Then her eyes closed, and she slept. Some days later, there were strange stories on the newspapers. Stories about young children who went out at the night and did not go home until the next morning.
The vampire which is taking blood from these children is Lucy herself.
So that night he took me to Lucy's tomb. I came nearer and looked. The coffin was empty. For me, it was a terrible surprise. But Van Helsing only shook his head. The next day, Van Helsing and I went back into the tomb again and opened the lid of the coffin. This time, Lucy's body lay there. She died more than a week ago, but she did not look dead. Then Van Helsing pulled back her mouth and showed me her long, sharp teeth. "Now do you believe me?" he said. "Lucy is now one of the undead." Arthur was very unhappy when we told him what we saw, and also angry. He could not believe that Lucy was now one of the undead, but in the end he agreed to come with us with the tomb. Van Helsing opened the door of the tomb, and we all went in. Slowly, Van Helsing opened the coffin. Arthur's face was white when he moved nearer. We all looked down. The coffin was empty. Then, through the trees, we saw something white. It was moving nearer to us. Suddenly it saw and stopped. It gave us a look terrible anger. And Arthur took his hands from his face and opened his arms to her. She was moving nearer to him when Van Helsing ran between them and held out his little gold cross. Lucy stopped and stood back from it. Then, with a look terrible anger in his face, she went to the tomb through the door.
Daniel must drive this route through Lucy's herd. Can you do this for her? I can't.
Are you, contracting people to do the acting for this documentary? Could I play myself? Think about that. So this is still Jonathan's Harker diary, but in another timeline. Some days after Mina got a letter from Arthur, she had another letter. This was from Professor Van Helsing, a friend of Arthur's. I hate Van Helsing so much, I can't even describe it. In it he wrote, I know from your letters to Lucy that you were her dearest friend. I would very much like to meet you to talk. I know how to do that. So the professor came to see us at her house. and we learn the full story of poor Lucy's terrible death. Yes. Then Mina gave Van Helsing my diary to read, and he learned about my time at Castle Dracula. Ah, you told him about me, you silly. He was very excited. Will you help us to find him? How sweet. He hurried back to London and to Jack Seward's house. When he told Van Helsing this news, he called them all together and made a plan. So that night, Van Helsing, Jack, Arthur, and Harker went out together to the Count's house. Mina did not come with them. She was afraid to leave. Harker was afraid to leave her alone. But she said that there was more danger for them than for her. Mina, you silly. You lied. Or you didn't know you were lying. Okay. They got in the house, walked through the cold, empty rooms, and at last found the coffins. They worked hard. It took a long time to break open each coffin and put holy bread inside them. Sorry. Holy bread. My gosh. They were just opening the last coffin when Van Helsing gave a cry. They looked up from their work and saw Count Dracula. Yes, Dracula. I'm Team Dracula in this story. I didn't say that. He came through the dark room like a black cloud. Van Helsing held out his gold cross. And the Count stopped. Afraid for their lives, they ran from the house. Count Dracula came through the dark room like a black cloud. Mina may be in danger now that he saw them. She was already in danger, my dear. But when they got back to Jack's house, a tall, dark man was standing in the moonlight by the window. In his arms, Mina. Her white nightdress had blood on it, and her face laid against Count Dracula. Blood dropped from his mouth, and he was holding Mina to him while she drank his blood. I am very Dracula fan, you know, fangirl. Van Helsing ran at the Count and helped up his gold cross. Again, when he saw the cross, Count Dracula moved back and dropped Mina's body. Count Dracula disappeared. Harker held her in his arms until the first light of the day showed in the east. Oh, you're making me emotional. If I could cry, I would. The next day, Van Helsing, Jack Seward, Arthur, and Harker made their plans. Mina was there too. They knew that they had to kill Dracula before Mina died.
If you don't, Mina will die and will be a vampire forever. If we can find him before dark, we can kill him.
But where is it now?
I feel that I am half a vampire already, and sometimes strange thoughts come into my head. I think that these thoughts and Count Dracula's. Just now, when you were speaking, I thought that I could hear the sound of a ship moving throughout water.
Of course, Dracula has decided to leave England. He knows now that we are his enemies and that it is dangerous for him here. So he's going back to Transylvania by ship. We must find out which ships left for the Black Sea last night.
They followed the Count's boat for 5 days, but he was now traveling by road. Sorry. So they bought horses. By late afternoon on the next day, they were getting near to Castle Dracula.
It's alright, Dracula is dead. The true vampire woman too.
The Tree Vampire Woman 2. Are they?